Good morning. I haven't heard any feedback today, so I thought I'd just do a couple of pings out here. We good? Okay. So any second now, by the speed of light, you're going to see this downloaded from the cloud. Okay, thanks. Good morning. As I say, my name's Martin Yates. I look after the Singapore Computer Society Special Interest Group for Cloud. We're a little bit behind time, so I'm going to sort of zip through these slides nice and quick. And that gives us plenty of opportunity in the tea break to have further discussions. So let's get started. This is the clicker. So probably nothing much to say about the Singapore Computer Society. You should all know that, but I just put it up here anyway. Long-time serving organization, back in 1967. Many groups, many chapters. Today I'm very happy that our groups, as you see down here, this laser works. The Special Interest Group of Cloud get together with the BCM group. In Singapore Computer Society, you're going to see a lot more of that interaction. If any of you are not Singapore Computer Society members, please make sure that you are, because it's a great organization to join. Just quickly, something about myself. Within that Special Interest Group, we have the Cloud Group. We run lots of interesting events. We have lots of really interesting speakers. We get together on a regular basis and have great discussions about cloud and all those things that are important to our future in cloud. So I'd love if not only you join Singapore Computer Society, but you join our Special Interest Group as well. From my own point of view, I'm a Singaporean national. I perhaps don't look Singaporean, but I'm originally from the UK. And I won't say my age, but I work for a company called Digital. Okay, so that's a bit of a timestamp. And words PDP and Vaxis might say something. Why are you all laughing there at the front? That's our dear. Okay, so maybe you're over 40. Okay, so yeah, a Vax. What's a Vax? What's a PDP? It gets really sad, I know. My special interests, and I want to be able to share that with you, are things around utility computing that started many, many years ago before the cloud concept kicked in. Cloud computing, of course. BCM and various other great topics which are going to be really important for our careers. As said, I was originally in the automotive industry, financial service industry, people like Barclays, etc. So lots of interesting things we can talk about. So when I was sort of asked to sort of do this presentation, I thought, well, you know, what's this all about in terms of the way our world is moving? And if you look at these displays here, it's actually pretty fascinating. If you look at our human history, it's like we've absolutely done nothing for thousands of years. And in the last sort of 200 or 300, 400, the whole world has changed. Yeah, from the penicillin, from the electricity, from nuclear power. It's all happened in that last sort of window of blue. So I think that's kind of really fascinating. Now, if you take a micro view into that window, you can see that what's happening with our own IT industry is that the cloud computing is one example. Not only is it actually sort of on a sort of a linear, yeah, it is also super accelerating. So what we're learning here is a very simple thing. When you innovate something, it feeds innovation. Innovation feeds innovation feeds innovation. Things get very hard to control because things change so rapidly. And whatever you develop and whatever you come up with is valid for less and less time because of innovations that are building on top of that. So that gives us a bit of a challenge. Interestingly, from the IT industry point of view as well, I noticed from various different surveys there's going to be an additional $1.5 trillion spent in the next 7 years on IT. Yeah, so that's a good time for all of us IT people to be involved in this space. But we've got to make sure we're doing the right things. Doing the wrong things in our job right now is not a good thing. Right? And I'll explain what those are. I just had to sort of go back a little bit in history, though, of course, because I believe in history you can tell what your future's going to be like. So if you look at all the things that were happening in the past, in the green area here, the steam power innovation, the innovation that fed the electric generators, the DC electric generation that came along. An interesting story. I see DC power, electricity generation, what we call the Thomas and Edison world, as a bit like what we're facing today. It's a bit like what we've been in the last sort of 10, 20, 30 years, in the sense that DC power wasn't very distributable. You needed a power station about 1 mile away from every source point, because DC doesn't travel. You can't share it very well. All right? And so Mr. Edison, of course, was very interested in this. He was making huge amounts of money in this approach. And I kind of akin that a little bit today of the traditional data center, the way that we've known and loved it back when I was in the VAX PDP world, right? And then you've got this guy, Mr. Westinghouse, that came along and said, well, that's all pretty fine, this DC power, but, you know, it's pretty stupid to have a coal-fired power station every 1.5 kilometers away from your consumers. So Mr. Westinghouse brought together this thing called AC electricity. Now, this is cool stuff. This is cool technology. It allowed you to send electricity for tens of hundreds of miles, and importantly, using transformers, step up the power. That was a technology leap, right? In the same way that we're having an innovation technology leap with what's happening around cloud computing. And from then onwards, you know, it's history. We know what happens. The AC, that new technology, that new thing came along, allowed us to take a transform and change our world. So, of course, the rise of the computers back in the 1940s, the world time and things. I know there were earlier computers, the Babbage things. I'm more referring to the things that use valves, transistors, and chips. You know, of course, valves have made a comeback. Anyone who goes down to the audio hi-fi centers now will see that everything has to have a vacuum tube valve in it if it's going to be totally cool. That was a real kind of unexpected thing to see an iPod docking into a valve amplifier. Yeah, so some things do repeat themselves. Yeah. So definitely the rise of the PC has changed the world completely. And then, of course, the network that's come along on top of that, the internet, the personal communication device, the smart devices, changing our world once again. And finally, the public and private cloud and how that's bringing it all together. So if you see, there's a kind of what I call a group of three kind of leaps there in the way the electricity runs, the technology, and now we have this grouping of the rise of the computer, the internet, and now the cloud services. So from a point of view of a simple career, we're here now. We're just on the edge of what we're going to start discovering with us, just in the same way that we were on the edge of when AC just started to get really popular. So a long way to go. What I'm basically telling people is that a lot of people are still very nervous of cloud. I'm saying if you don't embrace it, you will be out of business, full stop. It just depends on what kind of business process that you're following within the cloud. This is an interesting slide. I thought about this a lot when I was sort of writing it. It simply reflects that in this business world, business is business, right? People are there to take your money. If you're making some money, if your business is good, someone else is going to look at you and say, I want some of that too. Right. So, yes, I'm sorry that I'm stealing your customers, but it's just business, it's not personal. Right. And that applies to all of us in any one of our businesses, whether you're an IC provider, whether you're a bank, you have to take care. Now, what are you going to do? What are the things that you need to have inside that? Cloud's going to be one of the things that you need in your strategy. 2, a mobility strategy. 3, the ability to make smart decisions based on customer data. Raju touched on that earlier about being able to sort out unstructured data. 4, the ability to tell people that you're actually able to do it and you're able to understand where your customers are and your future customers. The problem is it gets a bit mixed up because everyone tells you these are the most important things, but it's very hard to put it all together. Right? And lots of people will come up with lots of solutions and tell you how to do it, but in the end you have to make the plan for yourself. It's your strategic plan that you have to make. Right? My point of view is that cloud is the one thing that will cut across that. Whether it is the social, the mobility, or the big data, cloud will be one of those fundamental components that cuts across it all. That's why I show that interesting diagram. Now, the problem is you need to basically calculate where you are. If you're building this for your company or you're part of building it for your company, what is your agility score? What is the chances of you being successful in building that future model, that future survival for your company? Yeah? So you need to start doing some sort of calculations as to where that might be. Now, I know I'm under a bit of time pressure, so I'm not even going to even approach that how you start to do that. There is something called value indexing that can help you, assist you in finding out, am I going to be a company that's going to be around in 2 to 3 years from now? Or am I simply just going to be overwhelmed by something out of the blue, some company, some upstart that's just basically come in and taken my customers away? Something very important to consider. As part of that planning, very often what I do with a number of organizations that I work with is that I look at where we are today, and that's basically the green sector here, the traditional data center services. And I simply say that, you know, your choices will be clear. At some point you will have to go to a public cloud service, and some people say, I need to stay on a private. Banks love private clouds because they believe that all their data is much more secure in-house. Of course, that's not necessarily true if your employees are leaching out the data from the inside, of course, as we've seen. So you could argue that maybe it's probably safer in the public domain. Yeah? So there's lots of interesting arguments, the naysayers and the doers or whatever. However, one thing for sure is the traditional data center model will be scaled down. The way I did my work in the past, my VAXs, my PDPs, my mainframes, my RISCs, my Power 7 architectures, whatever I used, it's going to be scaling down and completely changing. And in a few years, only a few leftover ugly applications will be left running on the traditional equipment. Most will either be installed in a private cloud or will be running in a public cloud. In fact, many new applications are being born today never knowing what a traditional data center was. They are born in the cloud. So the considerations that I always talk to people about and say is that there is no one sort of, when I mentioned earlier about the formulas that you have to go through about calculating your value index on agility and your strategic plan, is there is no one-size cloud that fits all. As we see here from the guys in the suits, that one suit doesn't fit everyone, it kind of doesn't look very nice, whatever, yeah. So depending on the size, small, medium, large enterprise, multinational or industry vertical, you've got a number of considerations to take into account. Things like, what's my business plan? What are my customers? What is my competitor strategy? Because you're there to try and get the money, right? It's about it's a competitive world, and it's getting worse. Many things you need to consider. Security, we've talked about already. Are there any national laws or security laws that are preventing me from setting up my cloud and using data and distributing it around the world? Yeah. So a lot of things that must be taken into account. That's why it's on every single individual here to own and take forward that responsibility. Don't look for people to give you the answers. Help them, have them help you, but in the end it's on your shoulders. Some recommendations. Oops. If my recommendation is my clicker should work. Okay, there we go. Just quickly, I'm not going to basically go into the details of this, but it simply says that, you know, start getting very close to the business. Traditionally in the past, IT stayed a little bit away from the business. This is not the time to shy away from going up to the CEO and saying, I'm from IT, I want to talk to you about your business plan. Right? That might be a bit sort of strange in many organizations, but seriously, IT is going to rule the world in this case. If you don't have a good plan that's aligned with your CEO and your board of management, you're going to start getting some troubles. And then they're going to come back to you about a year later and say, why didn't you do this cloud thing? Right? And those are the kind of real risks that you have to take into account. So, as I basically say here, sketch out the business plan from the business level, map that into some IT goals. There are smart methodologies, I can talk about those later, how you basically get business goals into IT goals, mapping that into an agile architecture, see here, how you get that agile architecture into solutions. Right? Because architecture is not solutions. First you need the big picture, the plan of what I'm going to do, the long-term vision. Yeah? Then it only goes into solutions. In our world often today, we build too many solutions without thinking about the bigger picture. I'll come on to that. And of course, once it's up and running, nothing, as I showed you earlier with the AC-DC power situation, yeah, nothing stays the same. You have to keep reinventing. Innovations will come on top of innovation. So benchmark often. Expect to change often. That's the term agile. Here's a picture I drew up pretty recently that talked about solution architecture versus enterprise architecture. In my opinion, not enough companies are taking seriously enterprise architecture. They're doing too much solution architecture. They're thinking about perfect buildings. Right? They're thinking about perfect railway stations, perfect airports. And they're building it up like a city. They're just building. But they don't have a plan. For those people that are, I guess most of you are here from Singapore, the URA, for me, is the ultimate goal of architecture. Because those guys are actually thinking about, it's great to build buildings at Marina Bay Sands, but how will we get our people there? How will we get the tourists there? You know, will they be close to the city? How will the MRTs work? How will the taxis work? Right? How will the ERP systems, charge systems work? So the city plan is what's really important, right? It's great having fantastic solutions, but without a good architecture and overall city architecture, things break. So, and this was a statement I quite liked, was always design a thing by its next larger content. A chair in a room, find a solution. A room in a house in an environment, and an environment in a city, plan. Right? That's not a bad way to think about what you're going to do in future. If you're not doing that, you will run into problems. If you build too many individual solutions in cloud, they won't stick together and they won't work appropriately in the way that you want it to deliver results for your company. So I come pretty much to the end now, zooming through it, but as I basically say here, both for customers and for IT vendors, we're in a huge change. I mean, we're both sharing the same problem. The world is changing too quickly. It's getting pretty uncomfortable. Yeah, so we have to respond to that. Even worse, are we entering a recession of some sort, a global recession? Probably. The statistics say yes. So again, it's more important for us to be agile. Use that cloud, use that architecture planning to become agile, to handle those situations that are going to occur to us in future. When our organizations say we want to cut headcounts or cut spend in IT administration, our cloud is going to be one of those things that helps us manage that change. Yeah? Very, very important. So again, just like everything, planning, timing, innovation is your opportunity for success. So please make sure your plan is on track and get something started. I will be with you for the rest of the day. I'm more than happy to talk to you about any of the things that I've talked about on a snapshot level. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you a good day. Thank you.